Good evening, everyone. Roland, how are you doing?
I am giving God thanks. How are you, Sir Twain?
I am doing very well. Awesome.
Good, good. I'm Roland Gale, co host for this evening. Now, for those who don't know, family time is about your issues and your relationships, your at home family, your community family, and your global family. Family Time is produced by Family Life Ministries, and our aim is to enable healthy families, which will lead to healthy nations. So stay with us, and please remember to join on all our platforms: Facebook, FaceTube. You hear that, Sir Twain? FaceTube.
Yes, face tube.
Facebook, YouTube. These are live, and of course, we have our Instagram as well.
Indeed. And welcome again to all those who are seeing me for another time. I'm happy that we're here. And let me say a special shout out to all the children listening in this your month. So we know that as unfortunate as it may be, some children experience abuse. And there are deep hurts that come with that abuse. Trauma comes in all shapes and sizes. The question is, how do those children become the fully adjusted, all you can be adult? How do they overcome the trauma? That's the $1 million question that we want to delve into today. What can we do? Can the children help themselves? Or is it that they'll need to get professional help to heal all that trauma?
All right. Do you know, our listeners now, do you know of any emotionally traumatized child? Were you traumatized as a child? How did healing come to that child or to yourself? Did it actually come? What happens to a child that is traumatized and doesn't get the healing that he or she needs? And tell me something. How can you tell when a child is emotionally traumatized? Some big
Wow,
questions.
Roland, I'm happy that you aren't asking me these questions because I definitely cannot answer. I
Hmm.
definitely cannot answer these questions.
Me neither.
But I'm hoping that our listeners and viewers will be able to chip in. I definitely want to hear what they have to say because they're always filled with so many experiences and thoughts that they can share, which help to liven our discussion. So, we're going to be delving into this topic, but we want your opinion. Tell us, what's your personal experience of emotional trauma as a child? Were you traumatized? How did you get healing? And as Roland said, do you know a child personally who has been involved in situations that has caused trauma? How have they been able to adjust? Have they adjusted? Send your information, your not your personal information now. Send your comments via WhatsApp. You may use text. The number is 876-997-3125, or you can use WhatsApp as well to this voice notes to the same number. Roland, it seemed you're rubbing off on me with all this tongue tie, all of this stuff, but we're gonna make it today. We're gonna make it.
We're going to
So
get going. Don't worry.
all right. So remember, send your text and send your voice notes to 876-997-3125. If it's a voice note, please keep it 30 seconds or less. You can post on our YouTube page, you can post on Facebook, and of course, you can call the studio lines at 876-968-8328 or 8327, and we'll share what you share as soon as we can. So don't go anywhere. We're going to welcome our guest very shortly. Please come back after this break.
I'm advice you don't know all this shot and tally. I have a message to everyone. Get vaccinated. Hey, tourism the main driver of the local economy. It provides us with job, feed the country. So everybody in the industry, Get the job and come follow me. It don't hurt. Do the dirt. Lick the nurse cause the vaccine work. Get vaccinated. Get. This is a message from the Ministry of Tourism. Get vaccinated. Just get vaccinated. Vaccinated. You're deaf?
When you say phosphorus, you say electrical. SWA cables, conduits, transformers, and breakers. When you say phosphorus, you say lighting, chandeliers, and more. When you say phosphorus, you say LEDs and solar water heaters. Phosphorus is electrical, lighting, solar, and LEDs. Visit us today, Kingston, Mandeville, and Montego Bay. Phosphorus.
Hi, welcome back to Family Time on Love 101, the family station. And welcome to our special guest, Tracy Ann Taft Thompson.
You see me?
Tracy Ann has been in the field of education for a little over 23 years. She's currently one of the guidance counselors at the St. Aloysius Primary School in Kingston, and she's a president of the Jamaica Association of Guidance Counselors in Education. I see Tracy Ann is laughing. How are you, Tracy Ann?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I am well. How come you're laughing like that? This is such a serious topic.
Yes, it is a serious topic, but as distracted by my niece.
There you go. Well done. Good distraction, these.
Yes, it is. Good
So,
evening.
welcome, Tracy. How are you doing? Roland has
I'm
asked that,
doing
didn't he?
good.
I
I'm
just feel like
doing
I want
good.
to ask the same stuff. But yes, you're doing well. I'm happy to hear that. One of the intriguing things I found out just by looking at the script is
Right.
that all your names have a T. I can
Good
see
to
where the
see.
Tracy and Tough, you didn't have much to say about that. But how did the Thompson work out? You chose that Thompson for, good measure?
No, 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 no. The Lord had his plan. I
The
just
Lord
worked
has
with
his
it.
plan. All right, I'll take your word for it.
Thank
So
you.
remember, viewers and listeners, we want to hear from you. We definitely want you to chime in. We need you to share with us your personal emotional trauma as a child and how you got healing. No, you don't need to tell us your name. We just want to hear the story. As much as you can share, we are happy to receive that. Send your comments via WhatsApp. You may use voice note 30 seconds or shorter, or you may use text as well to 876-997-3125. You may call the studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 28. And of course, for those watching on Facebook and YouTube, please leave a comment on those platforms. So Tracy, and we want to start basic. And let me say, big up to yourself as president. I never knew that there was an association for guidance counselors. So shout out to all the guidance counselors and those on your executive.
Exactly. Thank you so much, and we're happy to get the shout out.
All right. By the way, is this your first term? How long do you serve?
1 year.
1 year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're almost at the end of your year.
Yes, I'm halfway through.
Halfway through. All
What
right.
a journey at this time.
Cool. So let's start off with the basics.
Okay.
Let's define trauma. What is trauma?
All right. So trauma is an emotional feeling that happens as a result of some negative or bad experience. It's a feeling that causes you to not be yourself or to even develop in the way that we would consider normal. So it interrupts your normal development. It is experienced by many persons, and many times persons would um, not acknowledge it and uh, and not think that they were even traumatized by an event. So they actually, ignore the feeling and ignore what also happened to them.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Sir Twain, if I could just interject here. That is such an interesting comment to make because in preparing for this program, I began to think about if I had endured any trauma, and I can't think of anything. Is it because I have forgotten or deliberately put it out of my mind? How does that work?
More than likely, you would well, it's a, you've heard the term fight or flight,
Hmm.
Yes,
right? So some
yes.
persons, they, because of how horrible the experience was, they tend to not want to relive it or to even acknowledge that it happened to them, because some persons think that, oh, that will never happen to me, or that didn't happen to that person that I know. So they tend to have a block and not not think about it, limit the thoughts, or because when you think about it, you're really reliving it, so they don't want to relive that experience, so they just put a block to it. Unfortunately, when you block it, it does affect your way of thinking, so, and it does interrupt your emotional development. And some persons, they have a personality which is very unpleasant, um, and sometimes they're wondering why are they so aggressive when they don't really have anything to be upset about. But it's subconsciously it's there. That feeling, and it's a feeling that they're not acknowledging. So
Tracy,
Wow.
the use of the word feeling for some reason comes across to me that it's easy for us to say, well, it's a feeling, so it probably really is not real. And I'm remembering, how parents used to be. I guess they're not like that anymore. When you were
right.
smaller and probably you're crying about something, and they say, "You want me to get something bad about? You want me?" Which kind of says
Hmm.
you really have nothing to be concerned about. So if it's
Right.
translated into on the broader scale, is that something that we may look at as adults and say, well, it's really nothing. It's a feeling.
Well, it's an emotional response, and emotions are feelings. So we cannot discredit what a child says they feel. And that is why for a child who has experienced an event, we need to have them talking about it. So I really love the theme for Child's Month in terms of what it promotes. It's promoting us as adults listening to our children. It's promoting our children feeling free and safe to express themselves. So having the feeling, we have to just, as adults, listen to the children and what they're feeling. And sometimes they're not even understanding how to name the feeling or the most appropriate feeling. So they may go, you know, way over the top with it. And it is you as the adult would be given the opportunity to say, no, that's not really how it is. You kind of guide them to understand and name the feeling that they have, because they can only use words that they are familiar with.
Oh,
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sir Twin. Just want to ask this question here
no,
now.
man, definitely.
Can trauma be trauma to me, but not trauma to somebody else? Is it that trauma is a subjective thing, or can we say a particular event will always result in trauma?
A particular event will always respond in trauma. It's just we have to recognize that different people respond to it in a different way, and different
Right.
people will cope with it in a different way. So trauma is trauma. It's just a matter of how open is the person to acknowledging, accepting, and resolving the experience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
So
I
it's
get
up
you.
to the individual.
okay,
Right.
so it's individualized, but it can come under a general
It can come
heading.
under general heading. Yes.
Okay. So tell us about some types of trauma, and if you have any stories that you can share in the guidance counselor way, we'd love to hear any of those as well. So what are some
There are
types of
so many. There are so many experiences that we, as counselors, every day. It's difficult to say. It's difficult sometimes to share. Um, I'm trying to think of which ones I can just pull out of the hat. But in terms of the different types of traumas, we have three main types.
Mm-hmm.
We have the acute, we have a chronic, and we have the complex. Right? The acute. So I would say that the way in which we handle them, it is very. I mean, just give me a moment to
No
collect my
problem.
thoughts because I'm just thinking of some cases now. Do you know that sometimes you can listen to a traumatic experience and be traumatized yourself?
I think so.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
So
yes,
listen, that
absolutely.
so sometimes when you think about them, and there's some really bad experiences that especially children undergo, that we really, as adults, I personally, as a counselor, would wish that children could just be children and they could run and they can play and they can feel free to discover the world and the environment. They can feel free to know who they are as a person. These traumatic events tend to limit all of that. So you have, it's so sad to say sometimes, but
All right, but
things
Tracian,
can be,
before you go into Tracian, before you
yeah,
go into
go
the
ahead.
examples, I realize you want to just get yourself together. I did not hear in terms of the three types,
Hmm.
which ones are more terrible for want of a different phrase, or is there a grade to them? And how would you define each of those three types, acute, chronic, and complex? How would you define them?
Okay. All right. So the acute is really a main distressing event. So it can be one main event, such as maybe an accident. It can be assault. It can be a physical assault. It can be um, something like a natural disaster, a fire. That can be a traumatic experience. Flooding can be a traumatic experience. Near drowning or even rape can be a traumatic experience. So it's just one distressing event. All right. And then
Right,
chronic, right? Chronic would be when you're exposed to multiple um, negative experiences over a long period of time. So it's something
okay,
that prolongs. So where you have acute, where it was like a one-off, it happened
right,
and then stopped and that's it. You have to live with that. But chronic, it's where it's something that you really have to live with. It continuously happens, and so sometimes maybe like a serious illness can be considered as chronic, and ongoing sexual abuse is considered chronic. All
right,
right.
right.
And then we go to the complex, and this is as a result now of an exposure to a variety of traumatic events. So, as in the acute, you would possibly have multiple experiences. So you could be raped, as well as you could have experienced a natural disaster, and both of which could happen at the same time. So even during the pandemic, we can see instances of persons who would experience complex trauma. So you can see that the one which would be, I wouldn't even dare to say which is the worst because all of them are bad. But you can imagine if you have multiple traumatic experiences or bad experiences, that can't be healthy for you. That just is not putting you at the right place.
Oh. So
Wow.
we know about the different types of trauma, and I was making a bit of notes that you probably would have seen when I was writing away. So we have
Mhm.
acute, the chronic, and the complex, and it's easy for me to remember the ACC of
Right.
of trauma. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
get the notes there. So with the definition there, help me know, how would I spot the trauma? I know you said we have to help the children to understand what they're going through, which we kind of have to give them the vocabulary.
Right.
But for me, what would I see that I would say, you know what, that child is probably having trauma, and
Hmm.
when I know that they have been experiencing trauma, how do I respond?
Respond, right? So as an observer, it depends on what the traumatic event is. Let us say it's a fire. At one point, I experienced having children who were reminded, and that is the other thing. They had experienced a fire in their home environment, and the entire building was destroyed. Their home was destroyed. And then when they saw smoke and they could smell it, they started to cry. They just went into tears, just started crying and trying to get away from the space that had the smoke because of what they had experienced. So depending on what the traumatic event is, the most common is crying. They may be withdrawn. Sometimes they can't even talk. It's as if they're in shock, you know. And it depends too on the type of trauma that they are experiencing. Because let us say it's something that's going on for an extended period of time. Some of those children they have found ways of coping, and some of them they are traumatized, but they are they don't want everybody to know that this bad thing is happening to them. So they tend to find ways of hiding it. But if you know the children who are around you, most children will be talkative, they will be playing, they will be curious about the world. One major sign for me is if the child is sitting and they are not curious about their surroundings. They have no interest in participating in anything. If you try to get them to even share what they enjoy doing, they enjoy nothing. And so it is important for us to build relationships with the children and don't expect them to just be telling us everything, right? So just be on the lookout for signs of withdrawal. Be on the lookout for a, a child who all of a sudden just starts crying for no reason. Or sometimes they will come to you and depending on the age of the child as well, they will want to hug you a lot. They will want that constant reassurance. And you would be asking yourself, but what is happening? So sometimes when they come for the reassurance, you do ask them, what's going on? What's happening? You want to talk about something? You know, you encourage them to share. So we have to have a space or aura should be the one of trust, openness, you know. So you allow them to really release all that is pent up on the inside. Because sometimes the triggers, they keep it all bottled in. And I mean, they're young. How long can they keep it bottled in for? And it would be good if the listeners could share how long they have kept traumatic experiences for. Some of them they've spoken, adults have spoken to it as adults. They have not spoken
Right.
about it as children. And when they reflect on it, they realize that their personalities changed. And so, as parents, I would encourage us to study our children, know them, so that as soon as you see them acting off, off track in a negative way, and especially becoming more isolated, you really need to be having them express themselves, share what is happening.
A question for you, Tracian.
Sure.
In listening to the types of trauma and so on, in my own mind, have kind of categorized them in two ways. There's trauma that is impersonal, that things like a fire or a hurricane, things like an accident that's not really somebody's fault. Things like that would be impersonal to me. But then you have trauma that is inflicted by an individual
Right.
or that is caused by, say, for example, a rapist or an abuser of an emotional abuser. So you have personal and you have
Mm,
impersonal. Does
mm.
the child respond in different ways if it is personal versus if it is impersonal?
Yes, they do. Using your terms, the personal, those children are the ones who I really am more empathetic towards because they tend to blame themselves. Once, especially an adult who is seen as a caregiver or someone that
Yes.
they respected and someone they love, they feel as if they feel guilty. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be happy that I'm able to make them happy.
Right.
Um, I spoke to a child recently, and she went through a traumatic experience, and her thing was she felt really guilty about breaking up the family. And I had to explain to her, you did not break up the family, baby. The person who did what they did to you, they are the ones who broke up the family. They are an adult. You're a child. You couldn't, there's nothing else you could have done. And you were doing what you were taught in terms of being obedient, being respectful, and all of that. So don't blame yourself. Now, the ones who you refer to as the impersonal situations or circumstances, they tend to be a bit easier to release that traumatic experience and understand it some more. The ones who have been through the, as you put it, the personal, they tend to have a difficulty understanding why did this happen to me? If I did something different, would the result be different? But when it's a natural disaster or an accident that they have no control over, they're just saying, um, it could have happened to anybody. It
Right.
just happened to me. It just happened to me today. You
Right.
know?
So
Yes.
uh, just to help our listeners and both Sir Twain and myself, what's the correct term for it? I said personal and impersonal. What's the correct term?
Well, I'm not aware of a
Oh,
term for it. So when you
oh,
were being very smart about it, I was like, okay, that's good. So,
You can go ahead and coin that one for yourself, Roland.
I
exactly.
tell you,
That's
man,
definitely
these
yours.
programs are so important for us. These programs are
Yes,
excellent.
yes, they are.
Right.
So
So we're
when we recognize that, okay, go ahead, Sir Twain, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. I see you're in full flight. Go ahead, Roland. In
I
full
was gonna
flight.
say when we recognize that these are different things that the child has experienced, what is the first thing for us to really do? What's the next step for us?
Well, we have to listen to them to find out what the traumatic experience is. And it is critical that we listen more and talk less. So we prompt them to speak. We don't give them many options. You just encouraging them. How are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way? Get them to share what is going on. And from there, you can know if you need to refer it. And I heard you mention something earlier about what can we do, and referring is top on my list. If you're not a trained counselor, it would be good if you could put them on to someone who is trained to help them to overcome the experience as quickly as possible. As I said, the trauma interrupts their growth and development. So
And
getting
Tracy,
professional help is good.
Tracy,
Yes.
right before we head to the break, once we refer them, do we stop listening? Because sometimes it feels as if I don't think I should be getting this information anymore. You have a counselor, and the confidentiality between you and your counselor. So I did my part. I referred you. So I don't think you should come back to me and tell me what you and the counselor are discussing.
No,
Is
I wouldn't encourage that in terms of them telling you what they have discussed in the sessions. But I would say to you, the listener, encourage them to live life to the fullest. Talk to them. You guide the conversation now. You can open it for them to share how they're feeling if they need to, but guide the conversation into a more positive direction. What is it that you're doing with your life now? What is happening? What good is happening? A spirit of gratitude is something we have to cultivate in them. So, and positive self talk. So, you listen to them talk about themselves, and as soon as you identify that they are being very negative, you can, teach them how to speak positively to themselves and to view themselves in a positive light.
okay.
So
So I
you, so
imagine
you
I
wouldn't
need to
just
pull
leave
Absolutely.
off.
them. Don't just leave them. No.
I think I'll pick up on this one after, but Roland, go ahead and throw to a break so I can gather my
Yes,
thoughts.
indeed. This is so interesting to me. And I want our listeners to remember the question that we asked you earlier. Share with us your personal emotional trauma as a child and let us know how you got healing. You don't have to give us your name. You can do it anonymously, and we're just looking forward to your responses. WhatsApp, text, and voice notes, no longer than 30 seconds, to 876-997-3125. And you can watch us and comment live on Love 101 Facebook and YouTube. Or if you want to, you can call the studio lines 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328 and participate that way as well. And I'm also encouraging you to friend us on Facebook at FLM Family Life Ministries, follow us on Instagram at FLMJA, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Family Life Ministries FLMJA. And the numbers for the FLM head office are 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. All right.
Sometimes all we need is a listening ear. The listening ear, the counseling, the logical reasoning, and spiritual guidance are what appeal to us. That's why I'm here. I'm Dr. Joan Pinkney, the counselor, your counselor on Love 101 FM, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 10 to 11 p.m. You know you can call on me. I will listen and more. So let's talk about what's bothering you. Anything. Tune in, listen, call in, text, or voice message. I'm Dr. Joan Pinkney, counseling psychologist, ready with a listening ear. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 10 to 11 p.m. Right here on the family station, Love 101 FM. When you say phosphorus, you say electrical. SWA cables, conduits, transformers, and breakers. When you say phosphorus, you say lighting, chandeliers, and more. When you say phosphorus, you say LEDs and solar water heaters. Phosphorus is electrical, lighting, solar, and LEDs. Visit us today, Kingston, Maniville, and Montego Bay. Phosphorus.
I choose to start this year smiling with Colgate Palmolive. By purchasing selected Colgate Palmolive products at participating stores, receive premiums or samples. Promotion available from February 1st to March 17th. Go on, what are you waiting for? Start this year smiling with Colgate Palmolive.
Welcome back to Family Time on the Family Station, Love 101 FM. A special welcome to those joining us via Facebook and YouTube Live. Today we are talking about healing the traumatized child, and our guest is none other than Tracian Taff Thompson, who has all the T's and all the I's, which are dotted as well. She has been in the field of education for a little over 23 years. I know some people looking at the video are not believing that she's been in over 23 years. They're like, that probably includes her school time. But she's currently one of the guidance counselors at the St. Aloysius Primary School in Kingston, and we are happy to have her, even as we're an esteemed company, the president of the Association for Guidance Counselors in Jamaica. For those who are sending us those comments, please continue to do so, and we'll share as soon as we get them from you. So, Tracy, before we went to break, you were explaining to us what happens after an adult refers a child to a guidance counselor, because we really don't want untrained persons to be making matters worse by trying to help, but they're really not equipped to do so. And you are noting that we don't have to, or we shouldn't be discussing with the child what happens while they're in counseling.
Mhm.
But I know there's an adult somewhere out there saying, but how is the child going to respond when I say, "Oh no, you don't have to tell me that part," and they're saying, "But yeah," and you're like, "No, man, that's fine," and they're insisting, and you're insisting, and all of a sudden it becomes uncomfortable because they feel like you're just leaving them out there now. What do you do? Do you shut them down and say it's fine? How do you manage that?
What do you do? You can ask how the sessions are going. Most times the children will say, it's going good. And you have to pry them. Many times they don't really want to dive into it. But for the students who would want to dive into it, I would say listen, and still ask if it's helping. Do you think it's helping you? They may say yes, they may say no. Give them an opportunity to explain why. So if it is helping, good. If it is not helping, why? And then you as the adult, you can go to their parent or guardian, caregiver, whoever it is, and just share with them that listen, that she or he expressed to me that they're not comfortable with something, or, they're not understanding something too well. You let them know off the bat that you don't know the details of the conversation of the session,
Yes,
but you,
definitely.
you just want to let them know that listen, this is just a heads up. So your role is not to pry into what the session is. If the child wants to share, then you allow them to share, but you kind of encourage them to be an active participant in the session, because sometimes they don't know the person who is counseling them, so they tend to want to just shut down, and they would more prefer talking to you.
Hmm.
But you encourage them. So listen, just give her some more time. She's really a nice person, and she really wants to help you. So you encourage them to speak to the person in an open way.
Okay. And you mentioned a while ago the parent referring, talking to the parent and say, just giving you a heads up about how this may be going. When we do the referral, is it dependent on the trauma that the child suffered, that we get the parent involved, or we just skip the parent, just refer the child, and only when something else happens, then we kind of say, parent, I realized X was happening, and I referred. I told her to go to the guidance counselor at school. How do we do that? Do we
The,
talk to the
the
parent?
parent has to get involved. It depends on who you are as the adult and how you're connected to the child. If you are in a school setting with the teachers, they definitely come to the counselors. If you are, let us say the person is in your church and you notice that, you go directly to the parent. If it's a neighbor in your community, you go directly to the parent. I know that sometimes the parents themselves would be in denial depending on the event. They may be very much so aware of it, but they are downplaying it. And sometimes the parent will be like, I never know it affect her so bad or him so bad. He really tell you that, you know? So share it with the parent, because they are the child's protector, their first protector, the parent. And if the parent is in denial about it and you see where it is a recurring event, then there is always the children's registry that you can refer the child to, and allow them the opportunity to be protected and to have a voice, to be heard. So depending on what it is and what you know, when you call the children's registry, they would do an investigation to see, how far along it is and what exactly it is, and get the parents involved at that time.
Okay.
Tracy, and one of the things that I am trying to understand as a parent myself
Hmm.
is the role of other people in caring for my child. My role in caring for other people's children. Is there something when we started, you mentioned the fact that we are to listen to our children. We are to give them a listening ear. Is there any other behavior that as members of the child's community, are there other behaviors that we can begin to display or model for children for them to be able to grow out of trauma or heal from trauma? Are there other things we can do? Is what I'm asking. Apart from
Well,
listening.
apart from listening, we can have a positive attitude that we have to demonstrate. Hmm. I know some persons might not like this, but listen, life is not perfect. There is no perfect being. Situations, all of us go through experiences that we would prefer to not have experienced. But the greatest thing is to let the children know that um, you can be resilient. You can bounce back from whatever it is that comes your way. So as parents, as caregivers, we have to teach the children to be resilient physically and emotionally. And that's why it's important that they socialize and they get to speak with other children. You get to observe how they handle situations, even at school. And that helps in them developing a sense of resilience. If you want to look out, you want to also model behaviors like positive thinking. Instead of seeing a glass half empty, you see it half full. Um,
Oh man, that's such a yeah, okay.
yeah. And as parents, I would also say that you have to teach the children too that they are growing. They can liken themselves to a plant. They were a seed, and it is up to us, the adults, to water you, to nurture you, to guide you, so that you can grow full bloom, full term into an healthy, happy person, as happy as you can be. And sometimes we have to share with the children. They will ask us, "How are you?" And I will tell them, "Boy, I'm not doing so good today, though, but I am just going to make this day the best day ever." And then sometimes they say, that child just said something to me and I'm really hurt about it. But listen, I know that they didn't mean to hurt me, but I'm just going to see it in a positive way. And sometimes you have to teach them to stay away from persons who are very negative and who would hurt them physically, emotionally. Yes.
Okay, so just a bit of recap. I know that there may be somebody who, their Wi-Fi just went, it just came back and they're listening and they're saying, "What did I miss? What did I miss?" So I'm gonna try Tracy, and you can tell me if I have it.
Okay.
So when dealing with children with trauma,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things we have to get at is that we have to have a relationship with them, because you said we have to notice how they are, whether they've changed
Changes.
or not. So it's not like you just stand here, you don't know them, you just see something and say, "Oh, that
Yeah.
child has suffered trauma."
Right.
So we need relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Once we see something, then we need to give a listening ear. Ask
Right.
and say, "Are you okay? Is everything fine?"
Mm-hmm.
If it's bigger than we can deal with, depending on the setting, if we're in a school setting, we refer them to a guidance counselor. If we're in a church setting, then we talk to the parent, because in the church, but the church is the vibe.
Right.
And from there, we continue to keep up with the child, not to pry to see what's going on in the sessions, but to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that they're okay and they're adjusting well, and to keep a positive vibe going.
Right.
Right?
On track, on track.
On track. Awesome. I think my note skills are paying off. Yes, indeed. So yes, Rola, we have to make good notes. So we're heading into a break. And I realize it seems the trauma discussion really has people thinking. I think some people are trying to remember, did I really experience trauma? Was I just sad and nothing really happened? So while you think about it, we're going to this break. Please come back with us. Tracy and Taff Thompson has a lot of experience, and I definitely want you to pick her brain, even as Roland and I engage her in this discussion. But before you run anywhere, remember, family time is here on Love 101, and we want you to friend us elsewhere. So, we want you to friend us on Facebook, we want you to follow us on Instagram, and we want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Family Time is produced by, you guessed it, Family Life Ministries. And we're going to be telling you all about our social media handles later on in the program. And just to remind you of the numbers with which you can share your stories of trauma or an experience that you heard about, safe stories. You can use WhatsApp, voice notes, or text 876-997-3125. If it's a voice note no longer than 30 seconds, you may call the studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 8328. And if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment there. I'm Sir Twain, and we'll be going for a break. Come back.
Jamaica and its workforce are advancing quickly. Life changing opportunities are arising. You need training and support. We are the Renewed Heart NSTA Trust, committed to providing new and emerging skills training and opportunities. Come to Heart. We'll help you claim your place in the workforce of the future.
When you say phosphorus, you say electrical. SWA cables, conduits, transformers, and breakers. When you say phosphorus, you say lighting, chandeliers, and more. When you say phosphorus, you say LEDs and solar water heaters. Phosphorus is electrical, lighting, solar, and LEDs. Visit us today, Kingston, Mandeville, and Montego Bay. Phosphorus.
Welcome back to Family Time. I'm Sir Twain, co-host today. I'm rolling with none other than Roland Gale. Roland, you're still there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, we're still here. And our guest is Tracy Ann Taft Thompson. She's been giving us a crash course here. So as I was reminded, please remember to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram at FLMJA for Instagram, Family Life Ministries dash FLMJA for YouTube, and Facebook it is FLM Family Life Ministries. Those will be repeated near the end of the program, so don't worry if you didn't catch all of that. Today we're talking about healing the traumatized, the emotionally traumatized child. And one of the things we want to note is that there's no quick fix, but there's a lot of good information out there, and some of it is being given to us today by none other than Tracy and Taft Thompson, president of the Jamaica Association of Guidance Counselors in Education. Right. So, Tracy, we spoke about how an outsider, for want of a better word, may spot a child who is not necessarily doing very well and make referrals. But as Roland probably would agree, um, how does one? Hold on. We have a voice note. So let me take that one before we jump into this one because I definitely don't want to break you.
Okay.
When I was a child, my stepfather used to beat me in such a cruel way. It's like he enjoyed beating me. He found pleasure in beating me. I remember one day he beat me so bad I was coming from school. And when he boxed me in the face, blood came and I wiped my nose and was hiding the tissue to show my mother. And the tissue, Satan make the man see the tissue hanging out of my pocket. And he gave me another beating on top of that and said trying to mash up in relationship with my mother.
Hmm.
He beat me so severely one day that people gathered at the gate to stone him. It was so traumatic.
Wow. Wow. That is a serious one. I think it probably um the voice note provides a segue into the question I was going to ask, which is, as a parent, how do I know? How does Roland know? How does anybody know when it's time to go seek help? Because I believe parents within themselves are going to think, I'm your parent. I'm supposed to be able to help you deal with this stuff. So how does a parent decide, really and truly that when you're bigger than me, I have to seek external help?
Um, excessive beating. That is so drastic. Sometimes the children get beaten to the point where they have broken limbs. Um, sometimes they actually have nightmares. Sometimes they cringe just by a movement, a body movement of an adult, especially an adult who resembles the perpetrator or the person who is executing the punishment. Sometimes they actually wet the bed. Sometimes they actually wet themselves when they see the person. Sometimes when they know or they feel that they have done something wrong or displeased the person, they can either start crying instantly or they wet themselves. Yes. So when you know that it's something that you really need to get help for, it's when the child cowers in fear all the time. When you probably this thing we normally do as children, you just gesticulate and or you probably scratching your head or you're moving in a particular way and they flinch.
Hmm.
Once a child starts to flinch, you know that you're a bit excessive. So you need to get mediation, and mediation can be had at the schools. The counselors are there to help. They are not there to report and to get your child taken away. They're there to
They're
help.
not.
No, they're
Oh.
not. No, no, they're not. They're actually there to help. And listening to them, the lady that came on from the voice note, I really felt it for her because I'm wondering if she has ever thought about how that affected her as an adult. What kind of relationships did she get involved in? You know, how did that change her? So, trauma can really affect children who one day grow up into adults, and sometimes they give it back the same way they got it. Unfortunately, so we
Wow.
need to look
Um,
out for them.
yeah. One of the questions I have here now is the question of outcomes. Do we have any light at the end of the tunnel to say that when children experience trauma, they ultimately become better adults, stronger adults, wiser? Is there any kind of um,
Hmm.
comment you
I
can
see
make on
where
the
you're going.
outcomes?
Yes, the outcome, it can be very positive. As I said before, we have to let the children know that living the whole the human existence, challenges is a part of it. We will experience challenges. When we're traumatized, you find that we think that that's the end of their life, and they're so young, but they have a bright future ahead of them. And so once they get the right help, they can be very productive members of society who are more empathetic, they are kinder, they're more compassionate. Some of them have become counselors and they can actually connect with and inspire other people who experience the same thing. When you look at persons who share their stories in public, they can only share it because they have not gotten over it, but they have found ways of coping, dealing with it, accepting it, and moving on from it. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. They do live healthy, happy lives. They do find ways of connecting with people. Maybe they even live fuller lives than some of us because they realize that they appreciate life more. They realize that, I could have died. Um,
Right.
I could have lost a limb, something. So that spirit of gratitude is something that they emit. Some of the persons who are the sunniest, the shiniest, most energetic, if you really ask them to tell them their story, because everybody has a story, you would be surprised at some of the things that they have been through and that they have survived. Their resilience, we can't beat resilience.
All right. So
Okay.
we have a few voice notes and we have a comment. We'll take the voice notes and then Roland, you can go ahead and share that comment.
Good evening. I lived in an abuse situation, but my children felt it most. My husband, he would attack us with weapons. He was so cruel to the children, especially the girls, that one did not want to live. I went everywhere, every government agency, the police, everywhere. I was just in my car driving back and forth. Everybody took side with him. Now that my girls are grown, well, my son is very protective of his wife. My daughters are always on the defense. So, three of them, and none is married because they're not suffering this fate a second time. Two, the girls, two of them have been through counseling, but still you can see it on them. You can see it in them. And I went everywhere, victim support unit everywhere, everywhere. There was nowhere that they
Mhm.
started laughing at me.
Right. And listen, as a parent, I really appreciate what mom has done. I applaud you a whole lot because you did not stop. All when them laughing, you're still carrying them to get help. And guess what? The girls cannot say that you did not acknowledge that something wrong was happening. And the girls would now have to, it's a personal decision that they have to make to forgive. They have to be able to see that the father only hurting people hurt people, you know. Only hurting people hurt people. Somebody who loves life will not hurt anybody. So if he is an abusive father who hurts, he himself went through some hurt. So there is some cycle of hurt. And I would love to say to those girls, girls, be open to love. Be open to it. Not all relationships are painful and not all marriages are horrible. Be open to love and just love and accept yourself first. Yeah. And that's another thing, you know, when parents are going through that period and children are witnessing the abuse, that is traumatic as well. And that affects and changes the lives of the children. And listen to what mommy said. One of the girls were suicidal.
Hmm.
You know, they get tired of it. It's difficult. So we um, really have to show them that there is another way. And the greatest thing for me is to show them to Christ because only the good Lord Himself can offer the peace, can give us the forgiveness that we need to extend even to them, to the persons who are hurting us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tracy. And that's such a perfect way on which to kind of try to wrap up. We are almost out of time. And so I just want to say a big thank you to all the listeners, for everybody who joined us this evening. And it is it is unfortunate that we can't get to all the comments that we got,
Mhm.
but we did get so much information. And Tracy, and thank you for being here with us, for sharing your experience, your knowledge, and of course that last comment, that we just have to go to Christ. With
Right.
everything that we do, we just have to put Him first and at the center and at the end.
Mhm. Thank you,
Thank you for being here
gentlemen.
with us. Yes,
Thank
thank you. Um, Going to let our listeners know, if you have questions of a personal nature or if you're concerned about a friend or a family member, call us at Family Life Ministries. Our center is in Portmore, 117 to Seal Avenue. You can call 876-939-7917 for more information. And there are also counselors here in Kingston and other parts of the island. You can contact our head office at 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. And of course, you can make appointments. And you can only make an appointment by calling the office. All right. You can keep up to date with us on our social media. And I'm just going to let Sir Twain continue to wrap up.
Right. So definitely subscribe, like, follow using our social media handles FLM Family Life Ministries on Facebook, Instagram FLMJA, YouTube is Family Life Ministries dash FLMJA. And you know we're not leaving you without a verse. So the verse for today comes to us from Second Timothy 1 verse 7, and it says, "For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self control." Put it on the sticky side of your mind, as one commentator would say. Join us again next week at 5:30 on Love 101 Facebook, YouTube, and please tell someone else to tune in. Thanks again to our special guest, Tracy and Taft Thompson, and our show producer, Kathy Gale, Open Door Communications, studio facilitator, Timoy Butler, and of course, all our. Yes, thank you very much for being here with us. I'm your host, Sir Twain, on behalf of my co host, Roland Gale. Stay well, stay safe, and stay blessed.